All right. Let's see if I got on okay. Neat. I'm live. Cool. All right. I'm just going to wait for some people to trickle in. We'll post recording. All right. OBS should be working. Sounds like my mic is working, so we'll go from there. All right. I'm going to give people a couple minutes to trickle in because it's not even 5 o'clock yet. So I'll probably cut this all out in post. Maybe, maybe not. So I tend to kind of ramble on these things a little bit because there's a lot of things going on with Solana and the blockchain specifically, and this is fun for me to talk about. So I usually do a pretty good job of just rambling and seeing what's on, and then we're going to kind of talk through some things. Of course, you can ask questions at any time, and we can just kind of go through them. But I think it'd be kind of fun to go through something that I've been working on professionally for a little bit here. And we're going to do a notes.txt. So this is actual production code, or going to be production code, I should say, on a project that I am working on for a team based out in London. And specifically what I've learned with this topic, and again, I'm jumping the gun here, but we will basically be talking about Chrome extensions, their wallets, and what I understand as vectors of attack. But we can specifically talk a little bit about Solana security as well. So I'm just going to let dead air time for a bit. And we will get to streaming in a couple minutes here. And in the meantime, I am checking my Discord. I've made it a habit to not check Discord daily anymore, or at least if it's going to be daily, like once every day. Getting into the NFT space, it's really easy to spend all your time on Discord and Twitch, which I'm sure you guys understand. Or not Twitch, Discord and Twitter. Right now I'm checking the Trippin' Ape Tribes Discord. They turned out to be a strategic buy, and I can't even say I bought Tripping Ape Tribe. Um, I actually traded it for some dev work when it minted. So I probably lost money on that one, but I still have it, and it got me on to the yacht party in New York City, which was a bunch of fun. and I've actually come to like these guys. My original hope with them was that they were going to turn into kind of like an OK Bears, and since the mint was so hyped, I mean the you could buy mint tokens for 50 Sol, and this is before they even started minting. And then when they started minting, the floor price got as high as, I want to say, 89, and this is before it actually minted out. But okay, that's enough of Discord. We are going to kind of jump right into what we're talking through today, and that is going to be Solana and its wallets. Now, to give you a little bit of a backstory why I think this is kind of interesting, and hopefully you should listen to it, is because I'll get some questions on, people asking me, hey, how can I get hacked? How are these things happening, that you can, click on something and it drains your wallet? Um, so I can kind of explain a little bit like how that can potentially happen, some safety tips, and this goes into a little bit more technical than just saying like, hey, don't show people your private key. Um, it will go into what actually happens behind the scenes, and once you understand what happens behind the scenes, you can kind of start to understand if something is possible or not. So that will kind of be part of the talk. The other part of the talk is going to be about the actual Chrome extension itself. And this is applicable because I happen to be developing one right now for the company I'm currently working for. And the Chrome extension is actually new territory for me, which I think is really interesting because I've never actually made one before. And it turns out Chrome extensions are not that complicated. They're really no different from, let's say, a React website. The only difference is you have a little bit of extra JavaScript code that lives somewhere else on your machine, and that allows you to kind of interface with kind of like a local program on your own machine, and that's what the Chrome extension actually is. And we can kind of talk through that. But let's see. Let's kind of start with what can happen to my Solana wallet. Big question marks. And the first thing that I kind of want to put out there is nothing happens without your consent. But there's a caveat here. Your consent is your private key. So when people say, don't give out your seed phrase, that's obviously really important because how crypto works in the background is you have what's called a public and private key pair. And the private key, as the name suggests, is private. Do not show to anyone. And then your public is technically actually your wallet address, at least in Solana. So what happens, and this is kind of just a big thing to understand, is it doesn't matter which chain you're on. They pretty much all, at least I haven't seen one that operates without a private public key pair. The basis of a blockchain is having a verifiable ledger. And the verifiable ledger is basically just, think of it as a database, but much simpler than that, in the sense that a ledger just records transactions so everyone can know exactly what their balance is at the time, well, at any time that the block goes through. So for Solana, your wallet is literally nothing special. It holds basically a one number, and that number is how much Solana do you have. Like, that's the data that's represented by your public key. So when you trade Solana with someone, basically all that happens is you add a little, or you subtract a little from your account, and it automatically adds a little bit to their account. And if that can't happen within one transaction, it fails out. So that's how you can know that the transaction is always correct. For you to deduct from your account, some other account has to go up, or it's burned, which in that case, then it just goes down. So the reason I bring that up is because the ledger, and I know, people like to do the blockchain is it's this crazy buzzword. Really, the blockchain is just a verifiable ledger. And all that means is it just takes care. Okay, so I am terrible at spelling. So we're just going to have to be okay with that. I wish Grammarly was quick fix. Hey. So the blockchain is just a verifiable ledger. And all that means is that mathematically, it's not going to be wrong. So that's the base technology that all crypto is based around, is this thing right here. Like, this is the most important piece. The blockchain is never going to be wrong, and that's obviously good for people who want to send money, because it really comes down to addition and subtraction. Now, I set that basis because the only thing that can allow you to, and this is how Solana works, the only way to send Solana or burn it is to pass in your private key. So in the back end, in the actual runtime of Solana, if I just passed in my public key to this function, let's just say it's this black box function, because that's kind of what it is. If you guys are interested in code, we can certainly take a look at that later. But what happens is you have to send in your private key to actually sign the transaction. Without your private key, that cannot be done. So, like, I can't spoof your public key. If you gave me your public key and I tried to send it in to burn all his Solana, it wouldn't do anything. It would fail because it takes a special parameter, what's called a signer. And a signer is just your, again, private key. Without this, literally nothing of consequence can be done. So, when we look into how people can steal stuff from your wallet, right? What's going to happen, and this is why you want to stick with, good Chrome extensions. Specifically, honestly, just stick with Phantom. There's really no reason to not use Phantom. This is, tested and secure. The reason being is because every time you go to this, every transaction that's made to the Solana blockchain will present a request or a transaction, and it is up to your wallet to sign for the transaction. If it doesn't sign for the transaction, it's invalid and it will fail. Now, that's why you have to be very careful to look at specifically what you're signing for. And this is, I think, why they took away auto accept on Phantom. I remember in the early days of NFT land, you could turn on auto accept for like Magic Eden or Solana art, and that's how you could like snipe things a little bit faster than other people could. But what will happen here, and this is where people can get tricky, is they will hide certain transactions that you can sign for within the bundled transaction. So we're going to have, this is going to be our shopping list, our transaction list. And we might, let's say this is let's say this is a fake, fake mint attack. So, all those sweet Discord accounts that you see, or messages that pop up, especially when you're in a particularly hype project, you'll get probably 1,000 of these on, hey, mint now, this is open, Doopy's coming soon, open mint, you're whitelisted. So what's going to happen is they're going to bring you to some site, and you're going to basically click on, mint, right? Click on the mint. Click on mint. And what this will do is this will send transactions to wallet to be signed. And this transaction list, it might have, and this is obviously pseudocode. So it's not exactly how it looks like. But it will get a good enough idea. And it might say like, I don't know, let's say the mint is 3, deduct 3 sol. And again, like we said before, a ledger, it has to have a place to put that sol. So deduct 3 sol, and what it really does, and this is what a transfer is, deduct 3 sol from, my account, and then add 3 sol to scammer account. And this is what we call a transfer. Now, and they might even give you some, worthless fake mint. So it'll be add 1 fake Doopies to my account, and basically -1 or deduct 1 fake Doopies from scammer candy machine. And technically, we'll just call this a mint. It's not exactly how that works, but it's close. But here's where it can get a little nefarious. So you have this, right? And it's like, okay, well, it'll say, -3 sol when you look at, the estimated changes, which, by the way, those estimated changes can be spoofed. I forget seeing how, and this was months ago, so I'm hoping Phantom has that figured out. But they can actually kind of spoof the estimated amount change, because what happens, and this is kind of a good point and part of my rambling, what happens, so when a transaction is sent, basically what happens, it goes into what's called a pre-flight check. And this basically sends the entire transaction to be evaluated first before it's even submitted to the blockchain. So it goes into, I would imagine, some like local running that doesn't need to check or actually make the changes. But it basically runs the transaction in a sandbox. So it can kind of tell you beforehand, and this is where you'll see, transaction may fail, and it knows that because it basically checks like, hey, if I'm trying to spend 3 SOL and I only have 2 SOL left in my account, it can do those checks and bring it back. You can still accept to send it through. You shouldn't do that normally, but it runs it in this sandbox, and it will allow you to either, of course, accept it or submit it. But the sandbox will just tell you what the outcome is going to be for your side, right? What's the outcome of this transaction if we were to run it? And that's what the sandbox does. And just like a sandbox in real life, you play within the sandbox, but as soon as you leave, like, you can't bring the sand out with you. Ideally, right? So that's how you kind of know. And this is like what it will say on here, on the Phantom wallet. It'll say, estimated change minus 3 SOL plus 1 fake doobies. Like, that's what it's going to say. But here's where now that I'm getting to it, here is where people can be a little nefarious, because in that transaction they can bundle, and this is how they would steal. Let's say you had a Dronies, right? You had your favorite one of one Dronies, and they can basically put into this request, I believe it's change authority for Commander Dronie. So the fact that they do this means to scammer. So this means technically you still own the NFT, right? You still own Commander Dronie. However, because it's still in your wallet, it's still associated with your wallet. However, you can't do anything with this NFT anymore. You have no privileges to send it. I don't believe you can burn it anymore. No, you can't burn it. So really, it's still in your wallet, but you can't do anything. The scammer now has authority over it. And since he already knew how to input it, because what you can do before this command is sent, is you can basically populate all the NFTs in your wallet, or how many ever a transaction can handle, because there is a limit on that. And basically do this for, all NFTs. And as soon as you press accept on this, what happens is it doesn't transfer out of your wallet. It transfers, just the authority transfer. So like nothing actually happens. So once you press accept, you might not see anything happen. But I mean, you will get, minus 3 Sol and then +1 fake Dupy. However, what will happen, assuming they're decent scammers, is the scammer is then going to run a script that takes all of your NFTs and transfers them to their wallet. So that's how wallets get drained, from accepting something incorrectly, right? So it's this change authority that you really, really need to look out for, because this is embedded in what's called the Solana program library, which is where all SPL tokens come from and all NFTs are based out of. So if someone changes your authority on your specific NFT, you're shit out of luck. They may even given you 3 Sol. It doesn't matter, because now you basically handed them the deed. So like technically you still live in the house, but they have the deed and they can do literally whatever they want with it. So once this script is run, you'll see that your wallet has become drained. And that's why it doesn't happen automatically. Because again, if they were to just say like, hey, for all NFTs, let's deduct all NFTs and send it to scammer account. The problem with this, and this is why people don't do this, is because it will show up in your pre-flight. So we don't want to do that. And this is actually relatively computationally intensive. This is probably the fastest route to do it, because it happens automatically. But the problem is you then risk having to run multiple commands to multiple instructions to actually empty it all out, because this actually does a certain amount of arithmetic in terms of like it has to check both accounts. They both have to be instantiated. It has to +1 and minus the other, which there is a limit to how many transactions you can send in basically one bundled transaction to Solana. And I forget exactly what that is. They call it computational units. And if you get over that, it just rejects the request. So obviously, if you're a scammer, you don't want to run into that error. So that's why you basically can go through and get a list of the NFTs. You submit it into the transaction, and you can then change the authority to yourself. And then, you can take your sweet time on draining the wallet. It doesn't even matter if you get rid of the wallet, because it's all saved in the blockchain. So that's how scammers are going to do it if, you accept something. Again, back to day one, or the first thing, nothing happens without your consent, but your consent is the private key. So this is kind of avenue one of attack, is you click on something and you click accept. Okay, great. The other, and these are really the, two big ones. And what you'll find out in hacking is most of hacking is not exploits on the actual technology, it's exploits in humans. Generally speaking, if something is programmed and correctly pen tested, penetration tested, it's not going to have too many flaws. It's very hard to hack 2+2. However, people are quite infallible, and even myself. This is something that I'm obviously pretty crazy, and I'll have to wrap this up soon because I need to keep this to 30 minutes. But the other one is basically people get your private key. If they get your private key, and this can be from, key logging, you taking a photo of your seed phrase, someone, getting access to your files, not using a ledger, using a fake ledger. So any way that they can get your private key, because if I have your private key, that means I am you. If I have your private key, I can do whatever I want with all of your assets because I am the authority now. So that's why, like, you certainly need to protect your private key. This is literally you. So if they key log and they, find out what your private key is that way, taking a photo of your seed phrase, using a fake ledger, that can be interesting. And here's the thing that I don't want paranoia to set in, but this is something that happened to me. I've had the same MetaMask account for, I don't know, like, let's say 5 years. I've never had much in it, less than, let's say $100. And what happened recently, this last year, I signed back into it, and there was this NFT on Ethereum that I wanted to buy. So I bought some Ethereum on Coinbase, and this was like $500 worth, and sent it to my MetaMask. And again, I'm a pretty, smart person, and this just goes to show that anyone can be, kind of attacked, and that's why you want to cover all your bases without, having to lock the door 10 times. And as soon as I sent this to my MetaMask, it instantly drained. So what happened here, and this took me a while to figure out, and I don't know exactly how they got my private key, but at some point within the last 5 years, they got my private key. And what happened is they had a bot basically monitoring their compromised accounts. And if account is bigger than some amount of money, drain it. Because obviously when an account is drained, it's compromised and you're just going to delete it. So these bastards were waiting until I put in a sizable amount of money to actually drain it. And the thing is like, and the worst part is I was able to, because of the blockchain, I was able to track it to where it went. And this guy stole like, I don't know, I think it was like $30,000 within the last week of me seeing it. I'm like, man. So I went through, I cleaned my computer and did all those things. Again, I don't think it was anything there. But it kind of goes to show that was the other big vector of attack. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here for today. I know we didn't get to talk about the browser extension. We can certainly do that like next week if you guys are interested. But basically, just to give you a little sentence, because I did say I was going to talk about it, a browser extension is basically just a program on your computer that can talk to your browser. Crazy. The fun part is that you can actually store things like your private keys within that sandbox. So what happens with like your Phantom extension is your Phantom extension, that program houses your private key somewhere in your file system. And it uses that to sign in the transactions that it's given. So that's how that effectively works. It never actually gives out the private key. It can only sign transactions that it's given. And then send back those signed transactions. So as long as your Chrome extension is safe and they're not giving back the private key, you should be okay. Um, so yeah, that's kind of that. Basically, we talked about how fake mints can actually drain your accounts, and it has to do with changing the authority on the SPLs. And this isn't just NFTs. This is also like if you have Shadow Token, for example, they take that too. So they can change authority on a bunch of things, and then in their own time, they will run a script and drain you of everything. And then the other thing, of course, is your private key. We went over some ideas of how you can lose that, but try to just get a ledger, get a ledger, and never take a picture of your seed phrase. Keep it in a store box somewhere. So yeah, that's it for today. I'm actually going to go off and hang with some friends and watch the new Thor movie. So I'm super excited about that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will be posting this recording soon. All right, until next week. Adios.